Good morning, dear friends on Facebook and YouTube. Welcome. And to my dear friends here on Zoom, the morning Zoomers. Thank you for appearing so regularly and supportively and participantly. The building of community. That would have been a different show altogether, I think. Well, good morning. I identify myself as Robert Beatty. I'm a temporary blossoming of a flower of a human being. And I'm coming to you from Portland, Oregon. And this is a broadcast of the Portland Insight Meditation Community. Check us out, portlandinsight.org. Also check out robertbeatty.com for lots of wonderful things, including already in the blog. I'm ahead of myself here today. Last night, Gary was not well, and I took over his Boundless Heart group. And I came across a poem I just lose them in my poetry list. And this is a real fine one. I'm going to read it once. And it's by Oriah Mountain Dreamer. And it goes like this. The invitation. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your sorrow, if you have been opened by life's betrayals, or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes, without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, to remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you are telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself. If you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul. If you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it's not pretty every day. And if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand at the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. Oriah Mountain Dreamer, and you can find that, if you want, at robertbeatty.com, and it's under blog. It's the most recent posting. So, it's another morning. Oh, I forgot my date practice to remind it's October the 7th. Oh dear, I forgot my father's birthday. We were never sure if it was October the 3rd or the 4th. No one was harmed by my forgetting because he died 22 years ago, but usually I remember before now. So taking refuge, in what are we going to take refuge today? Is it the to-do list? Oh, I have a big to-do list today and a class tonight. The to-do list never seems to result in, well, it results in more to-do list, doesn't it? So, I propose we take refuge in the usual things, in being awake, in what we discover when we're awake, the Dharma and the path that leads us, and in the community of practice and the community of all life. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya. I'm very appreciative of the comfort and protection of the beautiful little house I'm in. Grateful for that protection. Buddha's coming for a little check-in before meditation. Hello. All right. Good dog. So, as is our practice, let's stop. Let's find a comfortable, upright posture. Let's notice the aliveness of the body. Notice how it touches the cushion of the chair. Somehow or another it touches the floor. There's pressure. And notice where this body sits relative to the room. The walls are over there. The space in between is like this. The body itself is like this. And once again this morning, or once again still this morning, the body breathes. Every breath has its usual beginning and ending. And there's that question of how intimately do we dare to be alive? Or how intimate dare we be to life itself, to this body? To this body with all its precariousness. Many years ago, I was seeking supervision in my psychotherapy practice. An older then woman, now she's passed away, Anita Witt, was helping me, and I was describing to her an insecure, struggling woman who I was seeing. And I remember all these years later, she said, She strikes me as someone who was never cherished in her childhood. Cherished. Are you willing to cherish the breath? To hold the breath as you would a 2-week-old infant? Each breath has a beginning. Welcome that beginning. Each breath has a rising to fullness, and then a decline, and then a vanishing. Cherish that beginning, rising to fullness, and ending. Of course, there may well be thoughts. There probably are thoughts. It's so useful to have the 5 hindrances in our conceptual library. If you're having trouble finding the breath, is it because desire, craving, wanting is in full bloom? Or because aversion, disliking, resistance is blooming? Is it because of restlessness and agitation, worry, or sleepy dullness, sloth and torpor, or doubt? So we come home and cherish the body that sits here. And what about the rest of the body? Perhaps you can open your field of awareness and notice the feet and the legs, Notice the pelvis and all the organs that nestle down in there, and the abdomen. Notice the hands and arms, and the shoulders and the armpits, and the whole of the torso, the back. The neck, the jaw and the cheeks and the eyes and the forehead, the scalp, and the ears. This is the container, or the closed field of the breathing. Our lives exist in the one moment of now. And we're always beginning over. So don't worry if your mind is wandering a lot. Just start again. In this moment, I wish to plant the karmic seed of concentration and mindfulness. And I'm using in-breathing and out-breathing as my compass for orientation in the midst of the complexities of human life. Breathing in and breathing out. Resting back into this present moment. Allowing the body to simply sit here. To rest here. Allow the mind to rest here. The breathing is a crucial, obviously, function. It is our connection with the world. And it exists only in the present moment. So we do our gentle best to stay with breathing in and breathing out. Right now. You may notice discomfort in the body or even pain. From the level of an itch to a chronic pain somewhere in the body. If we focus strongly on the breath, we won't be attentive to the pain. But sometimes the pain breaks through, and then it's wise to turn awareness directly upon the sensations of pain and notice if there's suffering along with the pain. See if they're the same thing. Or see if in fact the suffering is added on. Come home to the breath or to the pain as a secondary object and really open. Cherish this pain, this discomfort. Notice any disliking of it. Set yourself free. There is a practice that I'm told is common in Thailand, in which at bedtime one reflects upon, remembers upon your kind or good actions of the day. We can also do that now. Think about your kind actions, your generous actions. Your actions of willingness to attend to the needs of others sometimes. But also maybe putting your own needs, your true needs first. And there's a beautiful visualization we can do. We've done a few times in the mornings. And that is to really feel where your body is, how your body is right now. And then in your imagination or your mind's eye, imagine that you're walking down a very pastoral country road. There's trees and sunshine. Or maybe it's just a path through the woods. Either way, you realize you have all the time in the world. And you can be mindful of walking, and perhaps the birds in the trees. blue sky above. And as you walk along, you come to a gate. It's a very familiar gate. In fact, you discover that your name is on the gate. And it has a little latch. It's not locked. Anyone could go in here. But it has your name on it. And inside is a vast garden full of flowers. There are dahlias and roses and peonies and forget-me-nots and iris, tulips, crocus, lilacs. Everywhere you look, there's more and more flowers. And then you remember that this is the garden of the fruits of your former good actions. This is the beauty that's come from your kindness. It's your karmic results, your vipaka, for so many simple and small and sometimes larger acts of generosity and caring. There are whole hillsides of flowers that have erupted from the times you've been really attentive to your own needs and the needs of others. And so it's time for some harvesting, some filling of your heart. And so you notice to the left of the gate on the inside, there's a picking basket. And there a perfect pair of very sharp shears, so you can cut through any stalks with great ease. And so you make your way around your field, reaping the beauty of your own being, your own kindness. Whatever your favorite flowers are, load up on them. You can also come back and fill your basket again, because almost as fast as you cut these flowers, they grow back. And it's a beautiful day. And you have flashbacks to moments of kindness, to moments of goodness. And you can take here a long time or a short time, or as much time as you really want. And to honor the reality of time where our body still sits. Taking note of this garden of beautiful flowers, beautiful vipaka, fruits of your former good actions. Make your way to the gate and package up your flowers. Maybe you'll need a wheelbarrow to come home with them. Or maybe you take just a handful, just enough to remind you of your good actions, your good thoughts, your kind words. You put the shears in their place and put your basket where it belongs. You come out the gate and you close it and you lock the latch. And you look again at the sign with your name on it. And you know exactly where it is, so that at any time, any moment, perhaps some moment when you're feeling down or distrusting yourself or struggling somehow, you can always come here. Open the gate, fill your basket. The basket of your heart. And so now, coming back here to your sitting body, take a little while to walk back on the path, to walk back on the road, overhung by trees and birds. And discover here's your body again, or still. And you can bring your flowers with you. You can store them in your heart, perhaps. And then noticing your body in contact with the chair, the floor. And coming to the eyes, as we always do. Noticing what it takes to let the eyes open, and then let them come open. And maybe bring some of your bouquet with you. And offer your bouquet to someone on the screen. We can do that with simple words. May you be happy. May you have a fine day. May you notice your acts of kindness today, your acts of generosity. You've begun with a pretty important act of generosity right now, being together in Sangha to support each other in this practice. But also to give yourself this time to let awareness we can include dogs in our loving kindness too, of course, dogs and cats, the menagerie of the human homes. May all beings everywhere share in the merits of our practice. You might offer a flower to your teachers, your mentors. You've had so many. And coming from today, maybe we'll remember cherishing, to cherish yourself, to cherish yourself in your insecurities and inadequacies and supposed failures. I guess the one announcement I want to make is that Mary Stankavage is coming to teach us Saturday in online with PIMC. I think it's the 23rd. Anyway, it's a couple of Saturdays from now. She's a marvelous human being and a really fine teacher. So I encourage you to check that out, to spend, I don't know how long it is. It's maybe our usual 9 to 2 or something like that. But avail yourself of that. She has a strong recovery background. And I think you'll find her very interesting. So I'm curious, how are you? What joys and sorrows do you bring with you this morning? Any questions?
I have a question.
Ah.
In meditation, when a thought comes in, is there like a time before it becomes a feeling, or can you stop it before it does? I have PTSD, so I'm not always sure if they're going through or not. So I just wondered about that.
Can you give me an example, or maybe say it a different way? I think I understand.
Say I'll be sitting and I'll be meditating, and then maybe I'll use an itch for example. I'll get an itch, and then I'll think about what is an itch and why does it make you want to scratch it, and then I'll get annoyed.
Ah. There's I have a tangential answer for you. Um, hang on here. This. All right. I have two favorite words. One is in English ubiquitous, meaning it's everywhere. I once read a science fiction book called Ubik. And the other is papancha, which is a Buddhist word. And it means mental proliferation. And here, this is a very short little story that illustrates papancha really well. A woman wants some potatoes for the meal she is cooking, so she sends her husband to the marketplace to buy potatoes. As he walked out of the door, she calls after him, "Be sure and get a good price." So all the way to the marketplace, the man is thinking about potatoes and what he'll have to pay. If he buys the very best potatoes, he knows he'll have to pay more than if he buys lesser quality potatoes. On the other hand, the lesser quality potatoes are just that, not so good. In fact, he knows he'll have to be very careful in buying other than top-priced potatoes because the seller might try to stick him with a bad potato, even a rotten potato. When he thinks of someone cheating him by giving him a rotten potato, he gets really mad. Why do people have to be so greedy as to stick me with a rotten potato? Just at this point, he reaches the stall of the potato seller and screams at him, "You can keep your rotten potatoes!" Now, why is that humorous? It's because we know.
Classic story. Thank you.
We know, and so when a wandering mind arises, a thought arises, maybe there's another thought, and maybe there's some emotion that comes in, and it gathers momentum. It gets to be a storm. It's terrific to catch. It's terrific to catch it even after you've yelled at the person, "You can keep your rotten potatoes," to become mindful then and notice, wow, that was interesting. That's very helpful. Because what happens over time is that the moment of observation gets closer and closer to the beginning of the papancha train. And then when there's enough awareness, you'll notice that a thought comes up, boom, and then it's noticed, and then snip, it doesn't go anywhere because it doesn't have, because there's too much awareness. So we're gradually unwinding and unraveling our habitual patterns. And sometimes through deep insight into the nature of the self, we realize that none of these contents are personal. They're just patterns rolling on. And the more we move in that direction, then the more freely we interrupt the karmic patterns.
Thank you.
You're welcome. PTSD is very challenging because we have these PTSD comes along. It's in us because it saved us as a species. Something bad happened, and it was traumatic, and then in the future, and we discovered the world was a dangerous place in some way, and it happens at the level of physiology, and so. In the future, when an event occurs that looks at all like the traumatizing event, the body goes into full fight, flight response, fight, flight, freeze, and it's attempting to save us. But sometimes we get caught with old PTSD patterns that the life of today doesn't merit them. But we have these old physiologic patterns. And meditation can really make inroads in deconditioning PTSD. Of course, there's also psychotherapy and other treatments that are very helpful with that. Thanks for that question. Papancha. I'm in my Eightfold Path class tonight. I'm talking about skillful speech and papancha and idle chatter. Are categories. Idle chatter is one of the categories, and the world of the media is constant idle chatter. And the world of these minds before we begin to meditate is just idle chatter, papancha, papancha on top of papancha. It's good. I love that word. I like just saying it, papancha. It's onomatopoeic, sort of.
Robert, this is Had.
Hello, Hadley.
I just want to share my appreciation for a fantastic air quality index this morning, given that a few weeks ago we were not having that, and I didn't even know that. I took that for granted, but we have fantastic air to breathe, and I want to appreciate our dear ecosystem that produces that. So thank you for clean air, trees, and all green things.
Amen, brother.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hello, Robert.
Hello.
Hi, this is Robert.
Hello, Robert.
Hello.
Could you wave? I'm looking for you.
Here I am, waving.
Oh, well, I can hear you. Go ahead, please.
You mentioned a concept yesterday about the shadow.
Ah, yes.
And to me, anyway, it seems like a pretty complicated idea. Can you just reflect on that a little bit, and maybe how we go about knowing that shadow self?
I meant to spend a little time and think about it between yesterday and today, and I didn't. Yeah, but if you're really interested, you might well like. There's a short little book by Robert Bly called, I think it's called The Human Shadow.
Okay.
But how about this? Rhetorical question. Do you ever do anything that afterwards you think, I didn't want to do that. That doesn't fit my values. Sometimes maybe when you lash out in anger or you act out in some way that is not really the way you want to live your life. But there it is, and maybe there it is again for the 30th time or the 50th time. And where does that come from? And maybe here's another way to think of it. You act out in some way that you dislike you really dislike when other people do it. And it shocks you that you did it. And so it's pointing out that there's something in us that is very important to pay attention to. I just thought of a little example of shadow for myself. When my son Luke was little, very little, new, his mother sprained her ankle really badly, and this was at like a week into his life, and she was in bed, and I was doing everything, and he wasn't. He was kind of colicky, and he kept staying up. He wouldn't go to sleep, and if I walked him, he was okay. He went to sleep. Had a snuggly thing. But then as soon as I tried to put him down, he'd wake up and freak out. So around 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, after multiple attempts to put him down, he had little claws on his fingers. And as I was trying to put him down, he flailed and he scraped his little claws across my throat. When I was a young teenager, I was tied to a tree, and one of the older boys held a knife at my throat. And it wasn't really a threatening thing, but it was very scary and very humiliating and so on. And I don't like people fiddling with my neck. And I flashed from 1 second to the next, and the impulse I had was to throw him through the window. Just an incredibly violent impulse, I yelled at him. And I immediately knew I had completely destroyed my relationship with him, and everything was all over. But what I saw was something. This was not like me. This was the kind of behavior I would criticize in someone else, being a young parent and thinking I would never do such things. But the impulse was to hurt him, and I yelled at him, and then suddenly I was bathed in shame, and I took him into his mother. I feel sad as I talk about this. And I said, you need to deal with him. I am an unfit parent. That was an emergence of shadow, and I needed to make friends with that and to return to it. And I did some therapy work around it, and I discovered that I have that in me too. I had always had disdain for people who would even think such thoughts. So that's an example of shadow.
Okay. Thank you.
We can just think of it as parts of ourselves that we're not aware of. And we tend to project them on others so that they got to go somewhere, so we see them in others.
So, Robert, these shadows come from past traumas? Is that how it works?
Anything which in our childhood we could not allow to be conscious and come in, be part of our known ego, is repressed then in the shadow. Yeah. Which means Jung went to some lengths that there's also the bright shadow. There are competencies and capacities of compassion and so on, that if we were not allowed to experience them as a child, they too are there. And so as we do our work, as we do our exploratory work in meditation, we can also discover tremendous competencies or capacities of love and caring and being humorous and dancing. Anything that wasn't allowed in we can make friends with over time. And in my view of awakening, that's the journey, because we open to more and more and more and more and more till we open to everything, which is being awake. We're not using energy holding anything at bay. It doesn't mean we can't hold things at bay. We don't want to become 2-year-olds. Eight o'clock.
Good morning, Sangha.
I hear someone.
Jessica, sorry.
Hello, Jessica.
I just had an interesting moment of just lately I feel like there's a lot of serendipity about one thing and another. And yesterday I was part of a Zoom call and the speaker was talking about the society's collective shadow. And she was addressing the issues around social justice and white supremacy, and was talking about that as a collective society, we have this shadow. And I don't think she was speaking simply to the literal written about history of slavery, but also that shadow self that if I'm listening to you and I don't know any, I haven't studied this, but it strikes me that it's also those, in a way, especially as whites in this society that has centered us, that there's this shadowing that we have to be aware of just by being a part of the society that is centered on us, that we may not even be aware of behaviors and thoughts and things that in that shadow side that come forth just by virtue of stuff that we have repressed. I don't know, I just find it interesting because she was speaking a lot to that collective, and I want to learn more, but it was interesting that it comes up again this morning regarding individual, and she was just speaking to the collective sense of what can be a shadow in our society.
Yeah, I think the whole movement among white people to take the lid off systemic racism and in this moment I'm pulled very strongly internally to 3 years ago, I guess now, Jennifer and I went to the New Orleans to the jazz festival, and we went to see the Whitney Plantation, which I'd never heard of. And it's very emotional for me even to remember going there. And to be faced with the reality of slavery. There are walls there, like the Vietnam Wall, with the names of slaves, actual known people. And I think it's got, I forget the numbers now, but I think it's 250,000 people who are honored, and just the reality of that. That was when I started reading about slavery and the impact on all of us. And so there is a shadow, and quite perfectly, as under the rubric, let's call it the Black Lives Matter movement. It's much bigger than that, but there is, of course, a pushing back, which is, don't tell me that. I don't want to know that. I'm going to have to look at myself. And that process of looking at our shadow is very humbling to the ego. So, thank you for sharing that. And as I understand it, we will spend the rest of our lives uncovering more and more parts of this. And let's not forget the bright parts. That we're actually capable of more love and compassion than we ever dreamed possible. It's like, holy shit, I can be that loving? Whoa. Because we can focus on the dark stuff and, oh, well, I really am a bad person, which it isn't about at all. It's about strategically opening and becoming more and more of who we are. Thanks. I think I hear Tim. That bass voice I recognize.
Oh, no. have a book recommendation that along those lines, and it's by a guy named Ibram X. Kendi, Kindei. And it's called Stamped from the Beginning.
Ah,
And it's a history of racism, and it's brilliantly written, exhaustively researched, and the guy's a great writer, and he's not self-righteous about it. It's just straight up.
huh.
It's very inclusive.
Say it again?
It's beautiful. It's called Stamped from the Beginning,
Huh.
and it's written by Ibram X. Kendi.
Huh.
Who also wrote another beautiful book called How to Be an Anti-Racist.
Huh.
Which is, those are, in my opinion, two of the hippest books that I've read ever in my life.
Oh, thank you.
I'll write the names in the chat.
Oh, that's a good idea. Well, my dears, anybody sitting with anything else, please?
Robert, it's Jim. I put a reference to the dream that Carl Jung had that inspired him to do the work around the shadow in his training of other people. So it's really, it helped me understand things, to see the source, the dream that he had that stimulated his ideas and his methodology and the whole thing. It's really good.
Is that the dream of his father's church?
No,
Huh?
it's he's walking through London and it's real foggy, and he sees the shadow ahead of him, and he realizes that the light behind him is like his awareness, and the shadow is cast by him. That's part of him, but usually that shadow is flat on the ground and it's out of his vision, and he's not aware of it. But in that particular situation, it came up, and that your story about Luke reminded me of that. Suddenly there's that blackness, and that's me.
I thought of another dream it's in his marvelous book, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. A great read. His autobiography. He dictated it when he was 82. When he was a young boy, his father was a priest in one of the big cathedrals in, I think it was either Basel or Zurich. And there was a lot of hypocrisy. And he he kept having this feeling there was something in him he needed to realize, but he couldn't. And he'd never done this process of opening to an inner content. And so he goes on with the story a little bit, but then he gets to the place where he opens, or maybe he has a dream, but he opens to what's been trying to emerge, and it's a giant turd that comes down from the sky and smashes his father's church. And it was his beginning of his curiosity about the unconscious, that there were messages coming from within that he needed to pay attention to. He was young at that point. So, anything else? Please, dear friends.
Robert Hannigan. I just want to say quickly that this whole conversation and reality of racism in our culture is something that we got born into. It's a challenge, I know, for myself as a so-called white privilege. That's the world I have gotten to live in. But just to acknowledge that we got born into this institution. It was already going on when we got here. So to be responsible for that, we need to keep telling the truth about it and try to do our best to clean it up. but know that we didn't create it really. We were born into it. The party was already going on when we got here.
Thanks, Ed. So, last call, dear friends.
Robert, it's Dave.
Hello, Dave.
I'll be brief, but I've just been sitting with this, what I think is a really clear example of this shadow thing is prisons. You know, we have people in our society, they are us, and they do something and we don't own it. We say it's them, we take them, we toss them into a prison, we excise them from us. They are now away from us in this black hole, and we no longer have to own them. I think that's just in terms of our penal system, that's
Yeah,
a very simple example of shadow.
thanks. Well, let's go out on a song. I can't unmute anymore, but you could unmute. Would you like to join me in a song? Gallery view. So, shall we do the May All Beings Be Happy? May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Please have a lovely day, dear friends, and don't forget to glean your moments of kindness. Moments of kindness and moments of happiness. Just notice them, hold them to your heart. And then tonight, before you go to sleep, reflect on them. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for coming to the party.
Bye.
Thanks for throwing the party.
Yeah. Every day.
Indeed.
That's a good kind of party. Happens every day. Just when the center was created, my partner of the time, Nancy, and I, we went to Bali for 2 weeks, just after we bought the center. I think it was 2, it might have been a little longer. And my daughter Tara was living with us, and I told her, no parties, okay? And I trusted her. We came home. There was one party, but it started the night after we left. And it went till the night before we came home. And she took pictures of all the knickknacks, and she put everything away. And my son moved in, and he had his rock band, and they were upstairs. We had a little upstairs place. And the place was hopping for 2 weeks. The neighbors came to see us the day after we got home and said, there was a party at your house the whole time. It was quite interesting. Why would I have presumed? I forget how old she was. She was in high school. But why would I have presumed she wouldn't do that? Well, she was a good girl. It was funny. Oh, well, let's have a party today, a party of mindfulness. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for coming.
Everybody's on, everyone.
Goodbye, dear friends on Facebook. It looks like that worked pretty well today. Hope the sound is okay.